I'd like to give you the floor on your reaction to the Tampa Bay Times story that Antonio Brown's vaccination card may be fake. What's your reaction to that?
That really, to me, that is no story. He says he's vaccinated and has a card just like everybody else on our football team. And, there's a trust factor that goes along with it. And we did our due diligence. So everybody at the league will look into the matter and do their due diligence, but it's really no story.
When we were young and we wanted to have a beer or two, but we were underage and somebody had a fake ID, we always went to the store that had the highest trust factor when it came to assessing whether or not we were actually 18. It was 18 at the time. That's how long ago it was. Look, here's the bottom line. The NFL had no choice but to get to the bottom of this. After Antonio Brown's live-in chef, who was stiffed allegedly on a $10,000 bill, we wouldn't have even known about this if Antonio Brown simply paid people what he owed them, allegedly. That all comes to light 2 weeks ago. Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times, heroic by him because you put yourself into a tough spot when it's the team you cover and you put a stick right into the underbelly of the organization as they're trying to get together, get to the Super Bowl for a second straight year. They don't need this crap. And they clearly, as we heard from Bruce Arians, Peter, thought it was a non-story. It's a non-story until it's not a non-story. It is a story.
Right.
Antonio Brown and two others, Mike Edwards and John Franklin III, who's no longer with the team, suspended 3 games for misrepresenting their vaccination status. I mean, the NFL tiptoed around this as much as they could. They lied. Brown, we know, based upon the reporting, submitted a fake vaccination card. They lied about their status. To me, that is the worst violation of protocol that anyone could commit, because what you're doing is saying, I don't want to get vaccinated, but I want to have the benefits of being vaccinated. There's a huge difference in the protocols. I want the benefit without actually getting the shot. So what I'll do, I'll get myself a fake card and I'll tell the team I'm vaccinated so I can mingle and hobnob with all the people who don't have to wear masks and don't have to be tested every day and don't have to do all the stuff that unvaccinated players can do. These guys are lucky they only got suspended 3 games. I thought it should have been worse, especially for Antonio Brown, because he's got other personal conduct policy violations. I'm amazed it's only 3 games, because to me, this is the height of irresponsibility, and I think they should have come down on these guys even harder, Peter.
Can I read you a quote from Football Morning in America on October 26, 2020, from the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after the Bucs reached agreement with Antonio Brown? Bruce Arians told me, and I quote, "He screws up one time, he's gone." So, I mean, I don't know how you walk that back. I don't know. This is a screw up. And not only is it a screw up that resulted in a league suspension, but it is a screw up that should result in no one in that building ever trusting Antonio Brown again. Because how can, when you enter a new job and you're on double secret probation, and you then violate what is an absolute headline, rule in the NFL this year, COVID protocols. You violate that, and you put everyone who you come in contact with, the 200 people in your building, you put everyone you come in contact with at risk, because they don't have any idea where Antonio Brown has been. You live in Florida. You think Antonio Brown's wearing a mask all day? I doubt it. So, I mean, I don't know how the Bucs handle it, but it's in black and white. He screws up one time, he's gone.
Well, it's also in black and white that Bruce Arians said it's not a story. I mean, he said plenty of stuff that he'll just ignore. I mean, we are in post-truth America, Peter. The things that we said in the past don't apply to us. They don't get, we don't have to say, oh, well, I know I said I was going to do that, but here's why the circumstances are different. See, no. the check that he wrote to you in October of 2020, he's just going to ignore it. He's just like he's going to ignore what he said to Rich Eisen 2 weeks ago. He will just ignore it. He'll come out and say whatever it is he has to say. He'll take questions on it. It'll probably be today. You know, no press corps that covers a team on a regular basis is going to be as aggressive as they need to be because they value their jobs and their positions. And if you're known as a chronic pain in the butt, your job is much harder to do. So this isn't a criticism of anyone specifically. It's just the nature of the beast. He's not going to get grilled today by the people who cover the team. He's going to say what he says, and that's going to be it. And I doubt that anyone is going to say, here's what you told Peter King in October of 2020. What do you have to say for yourself now? I'll be stunned if anyone says it. I hope someone does, but I'll be stunned if they say it. So post-Truth America, none of that stuff matters. You can say up one day and down the next. You can say black one day and white the next. You can say X, then Y. It just doesn't matter anymore, and it's a sad commentary on where we are. But that's where we are. He'll just keep going forward because, Peter, it comes down to this. It's the old adage, excuses are made for the stars, examples are made of the scrubs. If Antonio Brown wasn't viewed as a key piece of the Buccaneers being everything they can be this year and how they've struggled a bit to be as good as they could be without Antonio Brown. They're even better with Brown. If he was just a middle-of-the-road guy that they could say, oh, well, Scotty Miller can do what he does, Jalen Darden can do what he does, they'd get rid of him. He'd already be gone. But because he's important to the cause, to get Tommy number 8, to get the Bucs back to the top of the mountain, they're going to keep him. It's that simple. He would say, hey, I told Peter King back in October of 2020, one false move and Antonio Brown's gone, if they didn't think Antonio Brown was a key piece of the puzzle they're trying to put together to win another Super Bowl. It's that simple.
And Mike, I think the one other thing to realize in all this is how valuable, and you touched on it a bit there, but how valuable he's become. When he's healthy, you can tell Tom Brady loves Antonio Brown and trusts Antonio Brown as much as any receiver he has. And so, look, you're in a 17-game season, and something's going to happen to Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. I don't know what, something. And they're going to get Antonio Brown back fresh, in what, 3 weeks. And they're going to get him back for the last 3 games of the regular season. And I believe he's going to be, unless they all of a sudden get principled, I believe he's going to walk in and be an important part of their drive down the stretch, starting with that game against the Panthers in Week 16.
And you know what? Here's the cynical side of me coming out again. It was just a week or so ago that I think it was Shefty who reported that Antonio Brown's ready to come back this week. And then earlier in the week, Bruce Arians said, well, it's doubtful he's going to play this weekend. Yeah, it's doubtful. He knew what was coming. This wasn't something that just popped up out of the blue yesterday. They knew which way the wind was blowing. So, they kind of laid the foundation for, well, he really wasn't going to play anyway the next couple of weeks. So, we wouldn't have had him anyway for this 3-game suspension. He's just really missing 1 game because of it. I feel like that kind of subtle middle finger to the process is poking around out there because he's still injured. He still wouldn't have been playing. Maybe he would have been playing if he wouldn't have been suspended this week and the next 2. And again, they said, they being the league, when this all came up, that it falls under the personal conduct policy. I'm confused as to why all 3 guys got 3 games. Because one of the things about the personal conduct policy, as it was beefed up by the commissioner back in 2007, when both Chris Henry and Pac-Man Jones got whacked on the same day, and that's when they made it clear that repeat offenders are going to get it worse, that the more violations you have, it's going to go up exponentially. If this is under the personal conduct policy, Peter, why wasn't Antonio Brown suspended more than Mike Edwards or John Franklin, who don't have the same history that Brown has of off-field misbehavior and suspension? 8 games last year under the personal conduct policy.
Well, Mike, 2 things strike me about what you just said. Okay, one of them is that, the NFL now has basically drawn a line in the sand and said to the 1,696 players who are active in the NFL right now, plus the injured reserve guys, they've said to all of them, if you were found to use a fake vaccine card, you're gone without pay for 3 weeks. And Mike, you know what nobody's talked about that's really interesting to me? Did you notice in the statement that the NFL gave that it was the NFL and the NFLPA? So I understand exactly what you're saying. Antonio Brown should have been more, okay? It should have been more. But when I saw this statement, I said, okay, the NFLPA signed off on this. And when you get the players' union to sign off on a 3-game in-season suspension for this, well, you know that, that is the union also taking this really seriously and not blindly protecting players at all costs. And so I thought that was a good part of this. And I understand I would have been much happier with a longer suspension, but I did think when you have the union involved that 3 games is fair. Of course, I would have liked to have seen it a little bit more. But the last thing I would just say about the sort of volume and about Antonio Brown is that I have found over the years in watching the league and in watching discipline, when they do this, they're saying to every other player in the league, you better have your ducks in a row. And if I were a coach in the NFL this week, today, I would spend 2 minutes standing in front of my team and I would say, hey, you all gave us your vaccine cards and you all sent us photos of your vaccine cards or whatever. We have them all on file. I just want you to know that the NFL could look into your vaccine status and could look at those cards now. And don't be surprised if they do. If I were you today, if you have lied, I'd go get the J&J vaccine right now. And that might not protect them from, further sanction from the NFL because they did lie at the beginning. But I think this is going to be something that every coach in the NFL will pay attention to today in their meeting with players.
Well, and I agree with you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't change the fact that a fake vaccination card was previously supplied and that player was violating protocol and in the presence of individuals who were vaccinated and they all didn't have masks on and the unvaccinated procedures weren't being followed by the player who wasn't vaccinated. None of that changes it. Now, I personally think Antonio Brown went out and got his vaccination, his real vaccination, once this all hit the fan with his former live-in chef beginning to make it clear he was going to let it be known that AB had a fake vaccination card. It doesn't change the fact that you previously supplied a fake vaccination card. And, I got a few more things to say about this. And here's one thing and this is a reason why Bruce Arians should cut Antonio Brown. He should honor what he said to you in October of 2020. Bruce Arians had 3 different kinds of cancer. Tom Moore is 83 years old, their offensive consultant. By lying about his vaccination status, Antonio Brown was able to be right up in their faces anytime he wanted to be. He's vaccinated. He doesn't shed virus if he's positive. Oh, by the way, he was positive at one point this year and missed a game because of it. He doesn't shed virus onto other people. He doesn't potentially sicken other people. He doesn't endanger other people. And I know for the players, we think, oh, they're professional athletes. No, none of them are going to get seriously ill or dead from COVID. But you got an 83-year-old assistant coach, and you got a head coach who's had cancer 3 different times. You don't know what a breakthrough infection is going to do to them. I know the overwhelming majority of the people who are put in ICU and who are dying now aren't vaccinated, but people who are vaccinated, some are still getting very sick and dying, and those are the ones who have the comorbidities. That's reason enough for Bruce Arians, if he has any principle whatsoever, coach, and if you're watching this morning, and I know you're not, you got far better things to do than listen to an idiot like me. Pete, I won't include Peter in that category. He's not an idiot. But Bruce, if you're watching this, or if you're listening to this, what the hell? What if you have any ounce of principle whatsoever in your approach to your life, you tell Antonio Brown to get his ass out of here now. Don't you, Peter?
I would if I were him. And I would say to my team, we had to do this. We gave this guy the chance of a lifetime. He won a Super Bowl ring last year. We gave this guy again this year, chance of a lifetime. He understood he was on a one-and-done situation. Now, in doing this, he would alienate Tom Brady, I'm sure. But if I were him, I would do exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned what the league can do, what the league will do. That was the first question I had. And I sent an email yesterday to the league and the union. Same email. Hey, guys, I need an on-the-record comment. You're on notice now. You got 3 guys from one team that had fake vaccination cards or misrepresented their vaccination status. I don't know. Maybe the other 2 didn't have fake cards. I don't know. I assume they all did. What are you going to do about it with your other 31 teams? Because surely this isn't the only place where it's happening. What kind of audit have you done? What kind of investigation have you done? I haven't gotten a response from the union. Haven't gotten any response from the union yet. What the league said is this. They checked with every team to see if there's any difference in the positive rates among the 80% of the players who got vaccinated at the facility and the 20% of the players who got their vaccinations elsewhere. Because those are the ones that potentially have the fake cards. Because as to the 80%, well, they got their jabs here. It's not an issue. We know that it's real. You got 20% of the league, 20% got their vaccination somewhere else. So from the league's perspective, and Peter, I don't know, I'm not a statistician. I don't think the sample size is nearly big enough to say, well, the rate of positives that we've gotten from the guys that we know absolutely positively were vaccinated is no different than the rate of positives from the guys where we didn't see it, so who knows? Just because that rate isn't any different, and that's what the league said, there was no difference. That doesn't mean that some of these guys didn't use a fake card, because some of the guys who were negative may have used fake cards and just haven't gotten it yet. So I reject anything other than doing with the other 31 teams what they did in Tampa. And it's not every player, just the 20% that you didn't actually vaccinate them at your facility. How hard can it be? And the circumstances, in my opinion, Peter, demand that it be done.
I think they should do it too, Mike. Now, I wasn't aware that 20% got it outside, 80% got it inside. If that is the case, then how difficult is it to check? And I'm trying to 350 cards or whatever it is. I think it would be about 350 players' vaccination statuses. Now, Mike, as you know, when you get vaccinated, you're handed a card, and on that card is a batch number and a site where you got, or at least it was for me. On my vaccination card, it says Hospital for Special Surgery, which is where I got it, out in Queens, in New York, and there is a batch number. So it's very easy to check whether those are legit and whether those are real. Now, you also get into the HIPAA violations, or the HIPAA laws at that point. So I'm not positive that the NFL would be able to do that legally. But I would also say that they ought to be able to get the permission of every player who handed them a vaccination card. Hey, yeah, go ahead and check out my card. I give you permission to look at this. Those who don't, they can cry civil rights or whatever, or personal freedom. If you've got nothing to hide, why would you mind the NFL checking out whether you're correctly vaccinated?
I reject any effort by any player to say, how dare you poke around in my status. I think they've already signed all the appropriate paperwork to waive that. This is your employer confirming whether or not you truly complied with a key term of your employment that affects your rights, your responsibilities in the workplace. So whatever they would say when it comes to the question of it would be too hard to do it, well, they did it with Antonio Brown, Mike Edwards, and John Franklin III. They did it in Tampa. So they can't say, well, we can't do it anywhere else. They did it in Tampa.
Right.
And you still have an obligation, I think, to try to do it because you, NFL and NFLPA, are on notice that you have people who showed up with fake vaccination cards, lied about their status to you so they could avoid the inconveniences of being unvaccinated. And in that regard, Peter, I got a ton of respect for the Cole Beasleys of the world who said it with their chest, I'm not vaccinated. Because you know what? All Cole Beasley had to do was go get himself a fake card. And right now, as long as he paid his bill to his live-in chef, no one would know that Cole Beasley wasn't vaccinated. And kudos to the guys who were honest about it, because I think it's far worse to just keep your mouth shut and lie about it and act like you're vaccinated when the team and the league believes you are and the truth is that you're not.
You know, I never thought I would be praising Cole Beasley for his vaccination status, but Mike, you're absolutely 100% right. The fact is, in this country, whatever the percentage is, 35%, whatever, people are just not going to get vaccinated. It is a fact of life. And so what are we going to do? Go jump off a bridge because 1/3 of the country won't get vaccinated? Just deal with it. Learn to deal with it. And I totally agree with you. I hadn't thought of it in that way, but you're absolutely right. Cole Beasley, everybody knows that when you approach Cole Beasley, if you're outside somewhere, you might want to give him a wide berth, you know, but you would not have known that with Antonio Brown because he had a card that said he was fully vaccinated, and I'm sure he was not walking around the facility with a mask on. So I agree. I mean, much bigger culprit here, much bigger, is Antonio Brown.
And falling in the middle, and I've already been told we need to go to break, but I need to make this point because I've been asked about this repeatedly. I wrote about it last night. People are curious as to why Aaron Rodgers wasn't suspended because he misrepresented his vaccination status too. Here's the simple difference. He didn't misrepresent his status to the league or to the Packers. They knew. Now, it's a different question of why in the hell they let him keep showing up in the press room every time he had a press conference with reporters without a mask on. They let him behave as if he were vaccinated, but they knew that he wasn't. At least they knew that he wasn't. He lied to everybody else except the team and the league. That's the difference fundamentally between Brown and Rodgers. I'm not saying it's right or wrong to only fine, well, it is wrong to only fine Aaron Rodgers $14,000 for one violation that had nothing to do with his violations in the press room. But that's the difference. They knew the truth. With Brown, they didn't know the truth. They were lied to by the player.
Absolutely. You know, there's nothing else to say. That is the difference. And you can hate Aaron Rodgers as much as you want. My Twitter feed is filled with people screaming about Aaron Rodgers. He should get it too. But the fact is, you get disdain for lying to the public and misleading the public. You don't get suspended from the NFL for it.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.